Hope you're doing well. It is flippin' freezing outside. It is like, what is it, Jay? Like 12, 13, 14, 15 degrees, something like that?
Well, in downtown Nashville, because of all the cement and all that stuff, it's 15 degrees here.
A balmy 15 in downtown Nashville.
Yeah. My truck said it was 14 in Murfreesboro when I headed in this morning.
12 degrees when I was in Mount Juliet on my way in. And we've got that whole lake effect thing because I'm by the lake.
Yep, 12 out in Robertson County, too. It's not fun.
No, it is not fun.
Do you ever run out before you're ready to leave the house and start the car?
No.
You don't get that thrill of the cold air waking you up like that?
I walk out, and what I do, that's actually a good idea. But no, I walk out, and it is just freezing, and I'm driving for about 3-4 minutes before my heater finally warms up the car. So, because, I don't get the advantage of parking in the garage like my wife does. Because all of her crap is on one side of the garage where I would be parking. Don't get me started so early in the morning on how I'm so mistreated in my home.
It's good for the immune system. The Scandinavians leave their babies out in the snow.
Is that what it is? Okay. Yeah, we've got, most garages, right? So you got a 2-car garage. Her car on the right-hand side can fit right in. On the left-hand side, whole bunch of boxes. And I'll give you a clue. I'll give you a hint as to whose boxes they are. The little woman with her big boxes.
Boxes and bags and old empty sacks.
Anyway, moving right along. So, I get to, but, it helps me wake up. I'm wide awake this morning, and despite the fact that I stayed up for most of that national championship game.
Yeah, it was a pretty good game. I mean, it wasn't a blowout or any of that. It was a good game.
No, love the Hoosiers, and so now that coach, and I'm not well-versed on college football, but that Hoosiers coach, I mean, that dude... only 2 losses over the past couple of years, a perfect season. So it's just the clock's ticking as to when he will end up at a bigger, better college, bigger, better job, maybe go pro. Who knows?
So he's already said, Cignetti's already said that he won't go to the NFL. He knows he's a college coach. So I think we might be seeing in this new era of college football the next Nick Saban.
Really?
Just how committed he is to the program. I think he's going to build up Indiana as opposed to, ditch it for something better. I mean, they just won the national championship. What more could you ask for?
Titans have a new coach?
Robert Saleh.
Now, Robert Saleh, he is also known, I don't know if you know this, Robert Saleh is also known as the coach that the Titans should have hired, which was the Buffalo Bills coach that just got fired.
Oh,
so they should have.
Yeah.
They should have hired that Buffalo Bills coach, from what I understand.
Sean McDermott, that guy. But I think the timing just didn't work out in the Titans' favor. They were just too far down the road with these other candidates.
Yeah, it seems like probably what happened. And let's be honest. I don't know if the Titans would be high on this dude's list of teams to go to.
So here's what's crazy: the other teams that made their hires. Atlanta hired Stefanski, the Browns coach. Then you've got Miami. They hired Hafley, the Packers DC. All of these teams hired their coaches before they had their second meeting with the Titans. So they made sure that they didn't come back to Nashville, and they got their guys.
Nobody wants to come to Nashville.
Robert Saleh apparently does, and more power to him,
Well,
I guess.
Awesome. I'm sure he'll suffer the same fate as all the other coaches. Because it's not a coaching problem, in my opinion.
It's an ownership problem.
Thank you, Jay. It's a GM problem. It's an ownership problem. So anyway, but whatever. This is not a sports show, so let's move right along. So Mike Johnson, just to kind of tell you where we're going this morning on this very cold Tuesday, January 20th, President Trump, I cannot wait to hear his speech to the World Economic Forum in Davos. That is going to be very cool. Will you do me a favor, if you would, Sam, and just keep an eye out for audio from Mike Johnson, House Speaker Mike Johnson, who apparently, from what I understand, gave quite the speech to the World Economic Forum. I have no idea, but they were very impressed with it. So if we could maybe find some audio bites, that would be great. Also, some pretty good polling news for the Republicans coming out yesterday. A couple of different polls, as a matter of fact. Just when you think that all is lost for the midterm elections, and by the way, that's not me. I'm actually very excited for the midterm elections. A couple of new polls have come out and shows that the Republicans are actually looking pretty darn good heading into the midterm elections. We, of course, have all of the issues going on still in Minnesota. You've got Don Lemon. This dude needs to just shut the hell up, but he doesn't because he just enjoys saying stupid things. We've got all the latest on Iran, all the latest on Greenland, how Donald Trump threatening to take over Greenland, the tariffs. Jay was reporting on how the futures, the numbers right now are down because of Trump's threats to tariff these other nations as it relates to Greenland. So that is having an impact on the market. There is just a lot to get through. So let's get right to it. Of course, protests in Minnesota, they do continue. ICE continues to be attacked. There doesn't seem to be really much of an end to this. Jacob Fry, of course, we spoke yesterday about how the mayor from Minneapolis says that his city is under siege from federal agents, and we still have. Can we just, for the love of all that is holy, Jay, we have not done the Insurrection Act as of yet. Donald Trump has not called for the Insurrection Act.
No.
I know that he has not. So we've got 1,500 law enforcement simply waiting for President Trump to order that Insurrection Act. I wish that he would, because I think the people who are watching all of this, I think that people, I'm sorry, the squirrel moment. Hey, guys, Donald Trump apparently speaking with CNN. Trump questions Denmark's claim to Greenland. They're saying this is a developing story. CNN apparently has some audio. I think it was taped a few minutes ago. Can you see if you can find that for me, Sam, if you would? Donald Trump talking to CNN. It's a gaggle. And he's questioning whether or not Denmark has a claim to Greenland. If you could find that audio for me, that'd be great. So I personally really wish that Donald Trump would call for that Insurrection Act, because I'm when Donald Trump raised the middle finger, hoisted that middle finger to that heckler in Michigan last week, that's how I basically feel about the world right now. This is how I feel about, the Europeans who were, peeing in their pants about, Trump taking over Greenland. This is how I feel about the blue-haired grannies in Minnesota attacking ICE. There is a great video. I'm going to see if I can find it because I didn't want to dwell on it. There's a great video of a woman, and I'm sorry that I'm continue to find these things amusing. A woman gets out of her car, illegally parks, gets out of her car, starts walking towards a guy. I don't remember who exactly it was, but Nick Sorter. It may have been Nick Sorter. At least I may have seen that on his X feed. Woman is yelling at him and won't stop walking towards him, and she's attacking his equipment. He takes out some pepper spray, Jay, and just right there like a can of Raid right in her eyes.
Yes.
And you know what? I'm sorry. And the guy even said, I think it was Nick Sorter. I don't remember. But guy says, FAFO. That's it. FAFO. By the way, there was some big news last night, courtesy of the Department of Homeland Security. Got this from Fox News.
They have arrested a total of some 3,000 illegal immigrants in Minnesota, including over the weekend, several convicted of crimes such as homicide and sexual assault. Meantime, several dozen protesters remain here at the federal building, protesting the actions of federal agents, but they are staying behind the newly erected barriers put here by the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department. It is a simple and effective, so far, measure that raises the obvious question: why didn't local law enforcement do this last week?
All right, so behind this reporter, sounds like he's from Britain or something, but behind this reporter, you've got all of these protesters, and they're behind, like, it looks like wooden barriers or something, just obviously some sort of a barrier. And that's where they are. And so the guy is saying, why the heck didn't the local authorities do this last week? Now, are they going to stay behind the barriers? I don't know. But you did hear that right. Over 3,000 arrests. That is huge. And, we know the kind of people that have been arrested. The reporter has a great point, of course, about the local cops and Tim Waltz and Greg Fry. So we've got 3,000 people arrested, a whole bunch of them have criminal records, obviously, and of course they're all illegal aliens as well, so they have that on them as well. But you look at these these barriers. These barriers could have saved Renee Good's life. They could have saved Renee Good's life. As a matter of fact, if local authorities had actually done their jobs and kept all of these, insane, blue-haired grannies, middle-aged women, always screaming, BLM types, always screaming and attacking the ICE agents, Renee Good perhaps would still be alive. And I think that that's a fair statement to make. So you have all of these people that have been going after ICE, and they've been unencumbered. And so people are being pepper sprayed. Unfortunately, you had Renee Good that was killed because of her own actions. And so you see all of these things that are going on. How much of this could have been avoided if Tim Walz, Jacob Frey, and the state leaders, the state officials, had told local law enforcement, you need to keep these people out of the way of ICE. Remember, Walz is always out there saying that Donald Trump wants the violence to happen. We're going to talk about that straight ahead. Apparently, Mike Johnson did not give a speech to the World Economic Forum. He gave it to the UK Parliament.
Yes, he's in Britain.
Which is basically the same thing.
In the British Parliament. Yeah, I do have a little bit of audio in the 5:30 newscast on that.
Why don't you go ahead and play it now?
Okay.
Because I find it actually, there's another bite that I want to play that will complement what you play. So just real quick.
Yeah.
Go ahead and play it.
And this was about stock futures on Wall Street dropping overnight after the president's tariff threat against these EU nations that are opposed to this whole Greenland thing. And Johnson, he made an indirect reference to the fight over the Arctic territory. He addressed, as you say, the British Parliament in London earlier today because it's, later in the day there. The speaker saying his mission there is to, quote, calm the waters.
Clearly, President Trump is taking seriously the modern and dynamic threats that China and Russia pose to our global security, especially in focus the last few days as it relates to the Arctic.
Well, and again, he has some other things that he said, but there's just a little snippet.
All right, thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. We'll get, as soon as these audio bites start coming out of Mike Johnson's speech to the UK Parliament, we'll be sure and play some of them for you. Has anybody paid attention to the battle going on between Don Lemon and Nicki Minaj?
I appreciate the accurate description.
So, unfortunately, I can't really say what Nicki Minaj said.
You can show the tweet for the YouTube chat.
I can't show the tweet for the YouTube chat. I've got to think about whether or not I should. Because there's always the you can, but should you? And this is one of those things where I will say this: Don Lemon is accusing Nicki Minaj of a homophobic slur, I guess, a homophobic comment, whatever it is. So I'm going to have to try and figure out a way to do this because Lemon fired back at her, and so. It's a big back and forth between Nicki Minaj and Don Lemon, which a lot of people are talking about. Don Lemon, let me tell you something. He can act all uppity and offended, but the reality is that Don Lemon absolutely loves all of this attention. Wait till you hear what he had to say coming up next. Okay, so I've actually realized that in reading Don Lemon's response to Nicki Minaj, I don't know if I can actually read any of this. Like the back and forth is very vitriolic. So
yeah, Nikki's not known for her clean language.
No, she's not. I probably shouldn't have wandered in. So one of the things, I'm just going to paraphrase. One of the things, can you explain? Hey, Sam, watch this. Hey, Jay.
Yes, Dan.
Can you explain who exactly Nicki Minaj is to me?
Just some. Well,
all right. Hey, Sam, can you explain who Nicki Minaj is?
I can't say the word on the air.
She's a female rapper, most notably recently at America Fest.
Yeah. She is like a converted Trump supporter now because of what he has done for Venezuela.
Well, and it all for her started when the COVID mandates were coming down, and one of her friends suffered heart problems from getting one of the vaccines. She was canceled by the left the second she spoke out about it.
Okay, so Nicki Minaj is now converted from a Donald Trump hater to a Donald Trump supporter for a couple of different issues. So now Don Lemon does his stupidity, which we covered extensively yesterday in the church. And so Nicki Minaj, you can go ahead if you want. You can show the screen. I have not shown the entirety of the message because I'm not comfortable keeping my job and showing the entire message. So she says to Don Lemon after she throws down what many would call a homophobic slur. And then she says, "How dare you? I want that thug in jail," she says. "He would never do that to any other religion," she says. "Lock him up," she says. And that is Nicki Minaj going after Don Lemon because he invaded that church with all of those other people.
I don't see. I saw the tweet in question. I don't believe that to be a homophobic slur. That was an everyday saying in the 90s on the streets of New York.
And that's all fine, well, and good. You're right. I'm still not comfortable showing it on my YouTube feed because
it's probably accurate.
I am paid by people who would not be happy if I showed that on the screen. Lemon responded by ripping Minaj in a video posted to Instagram on Monday. "Stop talking about crap," and I'm going to sanitize this. "Stop talking about crap for which you know nothing about. You are out of your depth." Don Lemon, of all people, is calling Nicki Minaj out of her depth, even though if you ask Nicki Minaj, who exactly is it? See, now I'm mad. Who exactly is it that ICE is arresting? Nicki Minaj will tell you the truth. Did Don Lemon tell you the truth yesterday? No. Don Lemon was like, "Oh yeah, the ICE and the Trump administration, they're going after naturalized natural born citizens. They're going after people who have never committed any crimes. All that kind of stuff." That leftist talking point. And the reality is, Nicki Minaj has far more truth in what I no doubt know that she would say about what ICE is doing than what Don Lemon said yesterday when he was talking about how, illegal aliens commit fewer crimes than American, natural-born American citizens, which is an absolute BS leftist talking point that is so easy to blow holes right through. So, whatever. And then he says, "You are a homophobic bigot. You don't care about African Americans. You are not an African American." And so now Lemon is saying, "You're not black unless you agree with all the other black folks out there."
Where have I heard that before? Well, I've heard the "you're not black" from former President Joe Biden.
That's
voted
right.
For him.
That's
right. What's recirculating and going viral right now that I'd love to see Don Lemon, kind of counteract with is President Obama giving Tom Homan a medal for his work as the director of ICE. After that, to that point, I think he deported 920,000 people. Same guy.
Same guy. I don't know. I didn't realize Jay Harper broke some news. Did you hear Jay break the news?
I usually break something else, but what did I do, Dan?
We said ICE is coming to Nashville. The border people, ICE, not just.
Yeah.
See, I thought that was funny. All right, so everybody's thinking about Greenland. By the way, Super Text line is now open, 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. Had a lot of people comment, actually, yesterday. We were talking about how I don't believe that these European nations are strong enough to defend Greenland. Certainly Denmark isn't, but defend Greenland against Russia or China because, quite frankly, the European nation, they can't even defend themselves against Muslims. They allowed Muslims to just rampage across their countries. You talk about Germany, you talk about the United Kingdom, you talk about all of these various, Poland seems to be the only country in Europe that actually understood the threat to the European continent. So now you have these same people that allowed Muslims to take over their country and try to cancel their culture. And essentially, they're not doing anything about it. European nations, UK, Germany, all of them, they're doing nothing to protect their own people.
Dan, if you want any further proof about the Muslim takeover of the UK, do you know what the number one boy's name was in the UK last year?
It's been Mohammed last couple of years.
Yeah.
And you've got people that are being perpetually stabbed in the street. That's not, Islamophobic. That's a fact.
They're calling for knife control.
So you have all of these people that are being knifed and killed and all of these things that are going on. Do you really think they're going to be able to – you really think these weak A leaders are going to be able to protect Greenland from the likes of Russia and China? No, they're not going to be, because they are weak. They are weak and they are woke, and they're allowing their people to be killed. So you have that, and again, a lot of people emailed me and sent messages and so forth about that. I do stand by those comments, but here's the other thing, is that there is a very long history of Donald Trump wanting to, I should say the United States, wanting to take over Greenland. It does make all the sense in the world, as I've said many times now, that if we are the driving force financially and militarily behind NATO, then we should have access to Greenland. Got some video. Mark Thiessen was on Fox News. You know, he is a writer for the Washington Post. He's a contributor for the Fox News folks. And he says, listen, he's got a solution.
What's going to happen? The way out of this is very simple. You go in, you negotiate with the Danes on a new military treaty that allows us to do anything we want militarily, build any bases we have, put the Golden Dome in. You get a minerals deal similar to the one we have with Ukraine, where we share the profits with the people of Greenland, and you have an agreement that there'll be no Chinese, no Russian presence, and then you let them have sovereignty, put their flag up, and they can pay for the health care, the universal health care, and the free college for the 57,000 people in Greenland, and problem solved.
I mean, listen, kind of makes sense. If we can get Greenland from a geopolitical and military standpoint, if we can get access to those resources, and we have the ability to further protect NATO and further protect America, that seems to make sense.
We talk about it all the time. We talk about what is said,
Brett Baer,
what is tweeted versus what is happening. You know, the iceberg above the water as far as the attention, and the iceberg below the water as far as what the ultimate goal and what's going to happen. Could that be what's happening here?
This is Brett Hume.
I would think so, Brett. And remember this, if you're trying to understand Donald Trump, you can look at what he does most of the time as a never-ending quest for leverage in dealing with other people, other politicians, and other nations. And I think, as Mark suggests, that's what's going on here. I don't think he's going to militarily attack Greenland. I think he'd love to buy it if the Danes would sell it to him.
Yeah.
But I think the kind of agreement that Mark has just outlined is probably very much in prospect. At least the president would settle for that.
Yeah, I think that is what Donald Trump does, right? What Donald Trump does is he, lights the place on fire, and then he says, okay, let's negotiate. And that is the way that he does things. It does make a whole lot of sense. And I think that, I was talking to, I forget who it was. Was it Stephen Bucci? I think it was Stephen Bucci from the Heritage Foundation a couple of weeks ago or a couple of days ago, where part of this is NATO and these European leaders, they have this sort of reflexive reaction to everything Donald Trump does, and it's just like the Democrats in our country, where they're just doing whatever they can to stop Donald Trump, regardless as to if what the president wants to do makes sense. And it does seem to make sense. And they're talking in this segment, I didn't air this part, but they were talking in this segment, and we've talked about it before, where we've been looking to get our hands on Greenland for a long, long time. And so Donald Trump is getting ready to light up the World Economic Forum. It's always funny. Some people, this was a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, where people were freaking out because Trump was going to speak or did speak at the World Economic Forum. He blasted the World Economic Forum. So And this is going to be one of those moments for Donald Trump where he is going to go in there and, as our friend Brian Wilson would say, he's going to talk about, what is it, how the cow eats the cabbage? I think that's what Brian says. I should not invoke Brianisms because I don't exactly know something about the cow eating the cabbage. Jay, do you remember what Brian used to say about the cows and the cabbage?
No, I can't say that I do.
He'd talk about how he's going to tell them about the cows eating the cabbage, I think is what he used to say.
Shake it off. Shake it off.
That's also perhaps what Donald Trump will tell the World Economic Forum. Shake it off, man. He's going to say, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get Greenland one way or another. And that is basically what Donald Trump has been saying. So, bottom line is we can do it the easy way or the hard way. All right, we got a lot of stories to talk about today. Ilhan Omar is under investigation. We are going to get to that. There are some very good, there's some very good polling news for the Republicans as well. We're going to talk about that. We do have I don't know, should I go ahead and play some of these comments from Don Lemon? Because I got to tell you, there is some audio. Let me go ahead and play it. I'll go ahead and play it now. I'm not going to set it up properly, but I might as well play it here. This is Don Lemon, and he's talking about why it is that he has now become the face of this church protest. By the way, Super Text line is open, 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. I'll set this up in a better way probably in the next hour, but Don Lemon, he doesn't understand why there is such outrage over what happened in that church over the weekend.
And there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are, in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice, but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy, a white supremacy. And they think that this country was built for them, that it is a Christian country, when actually we left England because we wanted religious freedom. It's religious freedom, but only if you're a Christian and only if you're a white male, pretty much. And so, yeah, I absolutely 100%, but it's an intimidation tactic. And, I said, I don't understand how I've become the face of it when I was a journalist. I do understand that I'm the biggest name there. And I'm also, as I was on with my producers this morning, you and Kylie talk all the time. My producers were saying, I said, how did I become the face of this? And my producer said, Don, you're a gay black man in America. And there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think
he's got to get over himself. Like Don Lemon has got to get over himself. So a couple of things. And it's like, where do I even begin? See, I shouldn't have done this because there's a lot to that. But when he talks about a certain amount of entitlement that churchgoers, that's he's disrespectfully, that's what he's talking about. Where he talks about this certain degree of entitlement. Yeah, Don, we are entitled under the Constitution to be able to practice our religion. See, everybody, including Don Lemon, people of his ilk on the left, they keep talking about how these folks have their right to protest, but what about the people in the church and their right to practice their religion? Nobody wants to talk about that. So there's that. And, we were talking yesterday and Nicki Minaj, I would say this to Nicki Minaj, who had that homophobic comment, whatever, and you can put that in air quotes, whatever. Do you know that the least amount of my issues with Don Lemon is his sexuality? Like, I believe the things that he says are so stupid and so historically wrong and so bass-ackwards and narcissistic and petulant that I don't care what or who he does in the bedroom. I don't care about that. I find what he says to be so incredibly horrifying. Yesterday, we went over the laws that ban people or mobs like the one you joined, the ones we played yesterday. And, here's the deal. When you have these mobs or these protesters going into a church, guess what that is? That is illegal. And so he is going to get wrapped up in all of this. And the other thing that I've noticed with him, of course, is he always manages to find a way to work in, white supremacy and white males and the fact that he is a gay black man in America. If we did a drinking game for every time Don Lemon invoked one of those two things in your average conversation, we we'd be drunk by the 6 o'clock hour. Scott Bessent has backed Donald Trump in the administration's push to take control of Greenland. 2805 out there has been absolutely triggered by this conversation of the United States taking over Greenland. I don't know what else to tell you, 2805, and I'll try to speak slowly for you. He says that Greenland is not ours to take. We're looking to buy Greenland. And I played you audio from Mark Thiessen. I played you audio from Brett Hume. I have said this myself. I believe that Donald Trump is setting the table for a purchase of Greenland. Now, do I honestly believe? I think I had Andy Ogles in here. Even Andy said, Congressman, I don't believe that we are going to try to militarily take over Greenland. I just don't think that we're going to do it. But right now, what the administration is doing is they're trying to make a play for Greenland, as we have in years past. So the more that the president talks about this, he's going to deliver what I believe is going to be a fire and brimstone speech coming up, I guess, tomorrow at the World Economic Forum, and he's going to be speaking to all of those European leaders. So, and by the way, do I also believe that Donald Trump, if he doesn't get his way, are we going to just say, screw it, we're going to leave Greenland? No, of course not. We have too many assets. We've got thousands of military members in Greenland at that hard-to-pronounce air base in Greenland, where we've got radar detection, we've got, all kinds of protection from missiles. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we do in Greenland. So again, not to belabor the point, but it does make sense if we at least have a conversation. The other question is, do Greenlanders want to be part of the United States, or do they want to stay with Denmark? Well, according to polling, the Greenlanders supposedly want to stay with Denmark. So, that's one of those things. You heard Mark Thiessen talk about, you know what? Hey, would you do me a favor, Sam? How many people actually live on Greenland? I think, didn't Andy Ogle say 30,000? 50,000.
Yeah.
So 50,000 people. So as Mark Thiessen said, you know what? Most people can be bought. So you offer them something, and you offer to try to sort of, mine those resources, those incredible resources that Greenland has, and somehow you are able to make it worth the while of those 50,000 people that live on Greenland, then, okay, that's one problem that has been solved. In other words, there are ways to handle this. And don't forget, Donald Trump is one heck of a negotiator. Art of the deal and all of that stuff. And you know what's amazing is that whenever people seem to count out Donald Trump, you know what happens? You know what happens? He ends up ultimately accomplishing what he wanted to accomplish. So there is a lot going on as far as Greenland. We'll continue to talk about it. The European nations, they're not for the president even making any kind of a conversation regarding taking over Greenland. I get it. You have the bazooka tariffs, I think they call them, from these European countries. So they're going to go after our tariffs. Donald Trump is threatening, tariffs on these countries as well. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth, and there's going to be a lot of meetings going on in Davos at the World Economic Forum. The president's going to give a speech. I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say, but it's going to be a lot deeper than just the president's speech. There's going to be a lot more meetings behind the scenes where the president is going to stand, sit down with these various leaders, and they're going to try to work out a deal. That is not a bad thing. Okay, coming up in the next hour, we've got reaction to Don Lemon and what he did inside that church. Harmeet Dillon and the DOJ, they are going after not only apparently those protesters that went into the church, but they are specifically going after Don Lemon. Lemon, of course, has his own defense of his actions, so we'll talk about that. I played you a little bit of that presentation a few minutes ago where Lemon came out and he basically said people who go to church are entitled. They feel like, the nation should revolve around their Christianity. Oh, yeah, and they're all a bunch of white supremacists as well.